Hello and welcome to Future Tech Talk episode 34. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. It is a pretty dusty day down here at the ballpark. The classic gray skies in Toronto. It's like the second week of February and it's so warm out. Like, what has happened to the weather? Obviously, global warming seems to be the culprit. It's just such a different reality from when I was growing up. 20 years ago, I'd be playing outdoor hockey right now in my backyard, frozen rink. I don't even know if that's possible anymore. Technology has come a long way. You can basically put pipes underneath your backyard and freeze the whole thing. Just doing it with a little water and a little help from Mother Nature. I feel bad for kids growing up these days that they don't get to experience what I had, although we had to deal with all the cold and the shoveling. Oh my God. When it snowed on the rink, it would be 4 or 5 feet of snow over an entire backyard. We had to shovel, pick it up, and lift it over boards. You had to lift it basically over your head. I don't miss that, but I do wonder how different I would have been if I couldn't come home from school and go skate in the backyard. We would spend so much time out there. It's really how I got good at hockey. I wasn't that good. I mean, I was smart, but I wasn't that athletic on my feet, on skates. But we didn't really practice that much. I mean, ice is expensive. If you go to a real hockey rink to try and practice hockey, it's not cheap. So to have the rink in the backyard, I got better really quickly. My hands were pretty good, but I would just spend all day practicing basically. I don't know. I really wonder how I would have turned out differently if I was growing up in the Toronto Bahamas as it is now. Okay, what can we talk about? How about Apple Vision Pro in the public? I'm sure you've seen a few posts of people wearing it out in public, at a restaurant or on the subway, or walking on the street. And first of all, I'm just going to say, I think 85% of them, and definitely 85% of the first ones you saw, could have been maybe guerrilla marketing is the term, where it's it's fake. It's people doing it on purpose, paid actors, basically. It's covert public relations. And if you don't think companies do that, well, I don't know what to tell you. They do. Companies pay for that kind of publicity. It's just attention, really. Hey, more eyeballs on the product. But then real people who don't know that these other people are faking it, they adopt that behavior. So there's a bunch of real people also using the Vision Pro in public because they see other people doing it. And it strikes me as so silly, but I do also acknowledge that it is probably the future in some way, because the technology is only going to shrink and become more comfortable. And if people are willing to take the chance of wearing that kind of headset out in public right now, it's only going to increase in the future. Would I ever do it? It's probably a hard no, unless it came in some really cool Master Chief Halo helmet. Maybe if it was a Power Rangers helmet, maybe you could get more people to wear your product if it came in some sort of armor. I think it would be laughed at, but it's not sillier than the regular headset, is it? I don't know. All I'm saying is, hey companies, if you want me to wear your wearable technology, just put it in some armor. Make me look cool while doing it. License out the Doom armor. Go get the Power Rangers IP. Disney, you own everything. Apple, go buy Disney, and then you can put your Apple wearable products inside of all of these costumes. Maybe don't call it a costume. Maybe call it armor. But legally, you probably can't call it armor, because I don't think it will actually protect you from anything. Ideally, it wouldn't be very heavy. All in all, to say, I think, with age and experience, you can start to predict the future a lot easier. I think I noticed that with AI, and everyone who looked at GPT-2 even and said, oh, look how dumb this thing is. It can't even write 2 sentences coherently together. It's like, yeah, but it's gonna get better. And then a couple of years later, we have GPT-4. It was so obvious that was gonna happen. I think it's just as obvious that the Vision Pro is the first step towards whatever augmented reality we are going to live in the future. And it is strange that it came now. Like, it just, I don't know, it's like not particularly attractive. It's expensive, but maybe that's the only reason people are willing to try it, is because it is so expensive. I think that has something to do with it. It's a luxury product. Maybe you'll feel less bad about yourself trying something so stupid if it's more expensive. Does that make any sense? Probably on some psychological level, but that's above my pay grade. And I think that with the amount of physical waste in the world and the price of physical space, like how much a plot of land costs, I just think that expansion into the digital world, full Digimon, going full Digimon with it, I think that's like a logical conclusion for a lot of people. You can't keep building things in the real world. I mean, you can for a long time, but eventually you won't be able to. But the digital world can keep expanding and expanding, and then maybe that brings up the topic of digital pollution and the idea of pollution in general being something that harms all of the good things that are created. Light pollution from cities stops us from being able to see the stars. Like, that's so wild. Other kind of pollution ruins our water sources. I think digital pollution, like shit posting, I guess it's called online, I think that's a form of digital pollution, making it harder to find the good stuff. Blogs written by AI, churned out by GPT, content farms, I think that's all digital pollution. Anytime it's more difficult, anytime you have to swim through things you don't want to experience in order to find the thing you want, I think you can call all of that intermediary experience pollution. So what is the digital pollution going to look like in virtual reality? Is it as simple as like, hey, we're going to go hang out at this virtual bar over here? I mean, over here is relative, just because, just like in space, there's no up or down. There's no up or down. There's no cardinal directions in space. I think that's the same for virtual reality. So there's no physical location of the cool hangout bar, but is it just the same as a website, a URL that you type in and then you're transported to that virtual bar? Like, I wonder how digital pollution is going to affect the way we traverse the digital world. Is digital pollution just going to take the form of ads where, you know, you're wearing the goggles, you're in the virtual world. If an ad pops up, you really can't escape it. Maybe it takes up your whole vision. What do you get? Like, and it's going to know if you're looking at it. So like, you have to stare at this thing to make it go away. It's literally going to make you watch ads for them to disappear. Would you do that to get in? Maybe you have to wait in line to get into the bar, and then while you're waiting in line, it's like, okay, watch these 3 ads. Is that all you have to do to get in? And then once you're in, once you think you're in a space with other people, just like a virtual reality chat room, is it going to work like how video games work with just different servers? And like, maybe there's only ever going to be 64 people within your space, but that's just on that one server. There's going to be literally thousands of servers. Is that how it's going to work? Is there going to be some sort of interactable representation of switching servers? Like, you know, if you're playing a video game, you just like click the different server. Maybe you disconnect first and then click the new one. But in these virtual spaces, is there going to be like a door that you can walk through and that acts as the input for switching servers? Like, that could be kind of cool. That could be kind of novel. But again, these are just ideas. And then in reality, why would you want to do that? Wouldn't it just be way easier to click? Selling virtual reality is so much easier than living through it. I could definitely see remote work being a huge part of the virtual reality experience, because collaborating with other people, it's It's hard to do over a webcam. It's hard to do over a chat because you don't know where the other person's head is at in virtual reality, especially if someone can see your avatar. I think you're able to speak way more freely and at least get a glimpse of what's going on in their soul. I mean, okay, I've never used the Vision Pro, so I don't really know what it feels like to look into someone's eyes through that digital avatar. Do you see life, or is something missing? And I just want to say that I see blue sky. The the dusty day has blown away, sort of. I'm not confident in this staying. I mean, I see a lot of white clouds, and there's actually blue in between the patches of white clouds. That's so exciting. Just like the future of Apple technology. Maybe this is a good time to bring up the idea of all these big tech companies getting into cars, the car market, making vehicles. And I think that's only possible due to the likelihood of electric vehicles taking over, becoming the predominant thing people want to buy. I don't think Apple was ever going to get into the engine market. I don't think they were ever going to create a gasoline-based vehicle. Electricity is something that they could certainly participate in. And the idea of these cars entering your ecosystem, your technology ecosystem, the ecosystem that you choose to participate in. So if you have a Samsung Android phone, maybe you'll get the Samsung Android car. If you have an iPhone and a MacBook, you're probably going to buy the Apple car. And that, for some reason, really bothered me. I don't know why. Maybe it's the concept of like losing out on features because I don't have the rest of your product. I really enjoyed the fact that like there are so many different car companies, and honestly choosing between them really has no impact on the rest of your life. But now it's kind of getting reversed where the rest of your life is going to have an impact on the vehicle you choose. And that argument just might be a luxury of the first world. Like, oh no, you have to choose between a Samsung and an Apple car. How horrible. I get that. But it is a little uncomfortable that like maybe my Apple car wouldn't work as good if I had an Android phone. Or maybe like I don't know what the big selling point would be that would make you want to pair the two, but these companies are definitely going to design them that way and market them that way. And does the world really need like 5 new car companies from Meta, Samsung, Apple, Google? Is that the same thing as an Android car? Like I don't know how it will shape out. I wonder if these other car companies that have established production lines, if they will license out to these other companies. But like, what would stop Apple and Meta from just starting their own factories? They have so much money. Why wouldn't you take it upon yourself? Would these other car companies be incentivized to like create a phone, an Audi Galaxy Android phone? Like, is that how it could work? Because these other companies aren't going to go down without fighting. They're all sort of racing towards the electric vehicle. But how are they going to beat the allure of a connected ecosystem? And maybe I just haven't thought about it enough. Like, I really don't know how my phone and my laptop and my car could interact in a way that would make me want a specific car. I just want something that drives. I just want something that moves. And preferably not the most expensive thing in the world. Dude, with the Apple car, I see 2 possible futures. That the Apple car it's going to be more expensive. But more expensive than what? Is it going to be like $75,000 standard, which is an expensive version of like a $40,000 car? Or is it going to be $200,000? Barely anyone's going to have an Apple car. And it's going to be a more expensive version of a $100,000 car. I don't know. I could see it being the 75 more expensive version of a pretty standard quality vehicle. High quality, but not luxurious. However, what about the Apple Car Pro? Or the Max? Or the Ultra? Maybe that comes down to the materials of the interior. You're talking like premium leather, and this would be for the $200,000 car. Premium leather, premium, well, not glass, premium console, premium screens, maybe mileage, battery would be part of the really expensive car. Maybe custom colors would be a part of the really expensive car, and the base model only gets 2 colors to choose from. I feel like all of these cars that come out from technology companies are going to have AI built in. You know, every car's got GPS basically. Every newer car has a GPS. I think, see, what would you want your car to have an AI for? Unless it's driving itself, which is obviously a huge deal. But do you really want like a car to talk to you on the road? Like maybe you do. A lot of people like listening to the radio, but they haven't had the opportunity to talk to an AI along the way. See, the thing about talking to an AI is the AI is built to be usable by the common denominator, the lowest common denominator, I should say, which means it's very patronizing. Patronizing? Like if you say an original idea, if you tell it your thoughts, it will say, "Oh my God, like great idea, Nolan. How did you come up with that?" And like, you know, the first time you hear that, you're going to smile. I've said before that I love when GPT compliments me. Feels so good. But after a while, you're like, okay, that's enough. Like, I'm not the most impressive person in the world. Please stop acting like that. But it needs to be like an ultra-friendly version because it's a piece of technology and you wouldn't want it to have like the ability to give you the cold shoulder. But maybe I'm just cynical and I'm like, I don't want this thing to gas me up that much. And you know what? Maybe I could start doing a little segment on here where I talk about how I use GPT, because there are some pretty unique use cases for it and I've been documenting them. I've had a video idea for a long time of like, here's how I actually use GPT. Because every time I show it to someone, they're like, "Oh, so what do you do with it?" And I'm like, literally, any problem you ever come across, you can ask this thing. And a lot of people don't really catalog their problems in that way. They don't really see problems they encounter as being solvable in this way. It's really a new line of thinking. And it is pretty difficult to give examples because there aren't necessarily any categories of examples that these particular situations fall under the umbrella of. It's much more of like a light board where you have a giant board of lights, and every once in a while a light will pop up. And if you step back, you really don't see a clear picture yet. Like, it's not completely obvious why these certain bulbs are being lit up and why GPT is able to handle these sorts of problems. But maybe I'm just looking at it from my perspective, and if you included everybody's solvable problems, you would see patterns. And I think a bunch of lights in a cluster that present itself are coding problems, programming problems that tech people need to solve. I think that's a very clear cluster, but what would everyone else use it for? It's not easy to answer. So here's what I used it for most recently. Last week we talked about Midjourney's new style reference feature. You provide an image. Midjourney, the bot, sees what the image was trying to do. It sees how it was made, and it's able to make future generations in that same style. It doesn't really have anything to do with the subject of the image. It's more how it was created. Like, was it created with a watercolor painting? Was it a pencil sketch? That sort of idea. But there is another Midjourney feature that acts super similar, like a sibling: image prompting. You give Midjourney, the bot, an image, and it does see the subject. It sees what's in the picture, and then it tries to make the future generations with that picture in mind. Not necessarily the style. It sees, like, let's say you had a pencil sketch of Batman. Image prompting will see Batman. It will also see the pencil sketch, basically, but it sees Batman. These new technologies, AI, the vocabulary we have to describe their features is pretty limited. These things have never existed before. There's not a lot of new words to describe how they work, which means that we have to use old words like image prompting and style reference. And those words, they're not necessarily obvious as to how they work in this new technology. Using old words to describe new things, like, it takes a while to build context within the human consciousness. So I was getting some questions about what's the difference between style reference and image prompting. Like, inherently, I knew the difference. I know there's a difference, but how do you describe it to other people in a YouTube video? A YouTube video is a succinct explanation where you don't really get to ramble. You have to, like, not necessarily provide facts, but you have to present information. So how would you describe the difference between image prompting and style reference? Maybe you have an answer, and I have an answer too, and it's a metaphor of mathematics, where I would say that image prompting is much more like addition. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 is equal to 1 + 1. Your pencil sketch of Batman is 1, plus the words, I don't know, anything in your prompt. You could do a nice day at the park. You would get a pencil sketch of Batman at the park. That's 1 + 1. Style reference is more like multiplication. It's your pencil sketch of Batman multiplied by a day at the park, a nice day at the park, equals a pencil sketch of a nice day at the park. It's not quite addition, it's more like multiplication. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you, which is why I tried to come up with more analogies or metaphors. I'm not quite clear on what the difference is when talking about AI, but nonetheless, that was my first attempt to explain the difference. And not necessarily explain it, but to like point out something that people are familiar with, addition, adding things together, pointing out something else that people are familiar with, multiplication, and saying, well, you know, addition isn't the same as multiplication. Well, image prompting isn't the same as style reference. Whatever the difference is between adding and multiplying, pretty close to the same thing as the difference between image prompting and style reference. Okay, but if that didn't make sense to you, again, I would have to come up with another way of explaining it. So the second way I think you could explain it is image prompting is like creating a sandwich. Peanut butter plus jelly is equal to a PB&J sandwich. Whereas style reference is more like creating a smoothie. Maybe you put peanut butter in the smoothie, and maybe you put strawberries or other type of jam flavored food into the blender. And when you blend it up, like maybe you taste the peanut butter, you probably taste the berries, but it's not a sandwich. It's a blend of the two things you inserted. Okay, I thought that was a fairly good metaphor or analogy. Why am I telling you all this? Because I told this to ChatGPT. GPT knows nothing about Midjourney. If you ask for help with Midjourney, it will say, oh, I don't really know what that is. It hasn't been trained on it. That's fine. So I took it upon myself to say, hey, GPT, Midjourney is an art generator, and it came out with a new feature. It's really similar to an older feature, and this is how I would describe the differences. And I tell it those two examples. I said, does this make sense to you? And it replied like, yes. And then it basically re-explained the difference. I was like, oh, you get it. Like, that's so cool that you're able to take something that the bot doesn't know about. You're able to explain it and then literally in real time test out whether it understands you. Because if it had given me a re-explanation that wasn't correct, I would know that what I said didn't make sense. The bot seemed to have understood what I was trying to say. And then I asked, can you think of another way to describe this difference? And it came up with a few examples that like weren't great, but one of them I thought really nailed it, and I used it in the video. Image prompting is more like writing a story about a specific character. We'll just use Batman again. You could write a Batman story that was drawn in a pencil sketch. You could write a Batman story in the style of horror. You could write a Batman story in the style of like a newspaper cartoon, but it's all a Batman story. It's about the character, and then you can put that character in any different sort of situation or any different style of writing. Style reference is more like writing a specific genre of story, regardless of Batman or not. Are you writing a horror story, a comedy script, a visual novel? Are you just writing a regular novel? The difference between writing about a character and writing in a certain genre, I think, is an amazing representation of the difference between the two features. And that is one example of how I use GPT. Do you see why that's a little hard to explain? Like, what category of problem does that fall under? If someone asked me, what do you use the bot for? How do I extrapolate? Like, what is the core idea of how I use the bot? Was it to reestablish an explanation? Was it checks and balances against how I wanted to teach something? Like, what's the category? What's the overall umbrella of problem I solved? I really don't know. I'd love to hear from you. Do you have any idea? Okay, one more thing we can talk about is that the FCC declares AI-generated voices in robocalls are illegal. And first, I can just say that the top comment is like, why don't we make all robocalls illegal? Yeah, that probably makes sense. The second thing is like, why aren't robocalls illegal? Sure, you're saying they can't use fake voices, but like, what? If you're willing to say that, can you not just extend that ruling to their whole practice? And I was thinking yesterday just how dystopian it is that nobody really answers their phones anymore. I mean, you'll answer the phone for a number you recognize, but we've been conditioned to ignore phone calls because the odds of it being literally nobody saying anything or a robot speaking on the other end, like it's become so invasive that we stopped answering our phones. Did you ever see that happening? Like, I didn't. Now, was that done on purpose? Probably not, but it is a crazy side effect of like unregulated access to databases of phone numbers. People can just find your number one way or another. Maybe they paid for it. Maybe you accepted terms of service for some website or whatever, and you basically allowed your phone number to be passed around. And I don't know what these companies call you for. Actually, I do know, and I learned this in a marketing course, a third-year marketing course from a really cool professor. And he was telling us that if you ever get a phone call and you pick up and you say hello and nobody responds, it's just like silence on the other end, that's done on purpose. What that person is doing is documenting when you're home, or that person is documenting when you pick up the phone, when you're available. That's all that is. Then they sell that to other companies. So if you pick up the phone and say hello and nobody answers, that's someone else inputting your data of saying that this person answered the phone at this time. They were available at this time. Isn't that crazy? That's one of the reasons I knew marketing was not for me. I'm like, oh my God, they'll do anything to get to you. They'll pump fake you at the line just so in the future they know when you're more likely to be available to be swindled. It's crazy. It is crazy. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. This was fun. The sun came out. There's not a lot of clouds anymore. I see a lot of blue sky. That's a sign we're all going to have a great day. I hope you're doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.